What's up, Penn Staters? Thanks for tuning into the Football Letter podcast. This week, we welcome standout volunteer leader Chuck Wall. Chuck is a 1978 Penn State graduate, and for more than a decade, he has been leading our Suncoast Chapter in Florida as the president. So Chuck knows all about the importance of staying connected to Penn State, the value of getting involved with the local chapter. They're very active in Florida. Florida outside of Pennsylvania is actually where we have our most alumni chapters. And so we're going to get into a lot of things with Chuck about the Suncoast Chapter, how they're connecting and uniting Penn Staters, not just during football season and year round, and just really get a little bit more background on Chuck and his involvement with Penn State and what's inspired him to become a volunteer leader and stay a volunteer leader for more than a decade. So Chuck Wall, welcome to the Football Letter podcast. We are so delighted you're joining us. How are you doing today, sir?
Just wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's still over 90 degrees down here in Clearwater.
As it probably is 9 or 10 months out of the year. And so, we just had Arts Fest, which is typically like the warmest weekend in State College. But yeah, hope you're enjoying the weather. Chuck is retired now, happily retired, he said. So Chuck, let's go back to the beginning here. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and you said, when you visited State College, you loved the town. Just wondering, take us back to that, wide-eyed freshman. What about State College and Penn State made it feel like this was the place for you?
Well, I went to a fairly large high school over in Pittsburgh, and a little shout out to Penn Hills. And a lot of people from the high school, Penn State was a place to go. When I did the campus tour, it was just so many beautiful buildings. It was summertime. You had the big old stadium out there, and the small downtown was just it just attracted me. I felt very comfortable there. I knew that that's where I wanted to go, and compared to some of the other schools that I had applied to and gone and checked out, it was hands down the best place to go.
So obviously, we always talk all the time, when you commit to Penn State, it's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. I'm wondering if you can give a little bit of background on the Suncoast Chapter in Florida, maybe the ground that you cover. And then how did you originally connect with the chapter when you moved there after graduation, or a few years after graduation?
Well, the Suncoast Chapter basically covers, Tampa Bay is a very large area, and the Suncoast Chapter pretty much covers the Pinellas County side of it, which includes everything from down at St. Pete Beach, Clearwater, Tarpon Springs, West Pasco County. It's and then there's always the Tampa side of things, and of course there's a Tampa chapter down here as well, and we work with them very much hand in hand. I'm good friends with the president over there and know a lot of people, and we've done a lot of joint events. The second part of the question, it was originally, I think I used to always pay attention and watch the games on satellite dish that I had in the backyard, one of those big old 10-foot dishes with the satellite receiver. We were having problems with that, and a fella had put a business card on my wife's Explorer at her work. Cindy's a school teacher, also a Penn State grad. And so we decided one weekend to go down and check out things at Varsity Club, because I was really having a hard time that week. I had to get the satellite video, and then I was getting the audio off of my computer, and it wasn't even synced up correctly. So it wasn't any fun to watch the game. But that's pretty much the beginning of my exposure to Suncoast Chapter.
So wanting to see Penn State football, watching it with fellow Penn Staters. You mentioned your wife, Sydney, that you met her at Penn State. You also gave a shout out to Penn Hills High School in Pittsburgh. A lot of notable football players that have come from that high school. Once you got involved with the chapter, at what point did you say, I don't want to just get involved, but I want to take on a leadership position? And what has inspired you, to be the president for more than a decade now? Because we know it's a volunteer role, but there's also a lot of work involved. And so like you have to want it. You've got to be passionate about it. What has inspired you to be a volunteer leader and to stay in this position for so long?
Well, I think mainly the whole thing is it just gives me. I kind of fell back into it to be honest with you. At the time, couple years I was going to the game watches with everybody. We do the annual chapter Christmas party, annual chapter spring picnic, and they said, well, why don't you get on the board? And the next thing I know, I was elected president. and from that point there, you just go with the flow. But once I had the position and started researching through, well, and then there's another side story there, and back to this. Cheryl Harrison was our regional rep, and I didn't know it until after I met with Cheryl, that she had also gone to Penn Hills High School too. She graduated the year before me from Penn Hills, so it gave me something. It gave me another reason to be connected with the university, and I just wanted to start doing different things and expanding upon what we had done as a chapter down here. And then going back and forth to that too. I think you've mentioned that there's a lot of chapters down here in Florida. Every time there's a bowl game in Florida, all the Florida chapters have a Florida chapter tailgate. So it's a combination of things that everybody works together and puts together. We've gone to Jacksonville, we've gone to Orlando many a time, down to Miami. And then obviously the famous Outback Bowl that we go to over in Tampa. We've had some real good times over the years going to those games too, and it's nice to get to know all those presidents. We have some really good guys now within the group. Dawson Wright is somebody that I got to know from Orlando. Nick Bocci from Gulf Coast. I'm friends with Bill Weary, like I say, from Tampa. So it's a good opportunity to get to know people around the state of Florida too.
Let's stick on this topic, Chuck, for a minute or two. The number of alumni chapters that we have in Florida, and then also collaborating with them and working together with them. Is there a larger message there that says something about the Penn State Alumni Network, that not only do these individual chapters have engagement, but then when you've got chapters, near one another, relatively speaking, in Florida, that you're working together and want to do what's best for your local communities and also stay connected to Penn State?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really kind of interesting. Of course, we're all down here in the SEC country, and on the weekends, if you read the newspaper, about the only thing they talk about is Florida and Florida State, and with USF right across the bay from us, those are the three teams that they always talk about. So if I want to get any real good news about Penn State, I have to go to Penn State for my news. That's just the thing. More to the national news, television, but any of the print things has gone out. But we have the band together down here. But I do see some of that by being down in an area that people sometimes come to on vacation. We get a lot of visitors, so to speak, during our game watches in the fall time, and then sometimes even for bowl games. But I've gotten to know some people from other chapters. And in fact, the Wyoming Valley chapter, Joe and Tiziana, they were great people, and I, every time I get a chance to go back to a game, I always make sure I stop by and see them at their tailgate, and they're always welcome. Anybody from the association is always welcome. That's one of the things, that I like about the the one membership that they've gone to is it makes people feel a little bit more comfortable going to other chapters when they travel into different places.
Yeah, Chuck mentioned the one membership model of the Alumni Association. So when you become a member of the Alumni Association, he's referencing you're automatically a member of all of the chapters, all of the affiliate groups. There's no other, action or required, nothing else, that no other fees involved. So if you're in Florida, you can go to a chapter watch party. If you move to Chicago, you're automatically part of the Chicago chapter. If you move back to Pennsylvania, like Chuck was saying. And to your point, one of the reasons why we did that was to make it as efficient and as easy as possible for Penn Staters to find one another, because we know Penn Staters have lives of their own, they move around, and so but that was the one membership. So thanks for mentioning that, Chuck, and I'm glad to hear that it's benefited you, and that it's something that you've noticed and have taken advantage of.
Yes, absolutely, and it works for me too. Now that I'm retired, I can travel a little bit if I want to, and if I'm someplace, I always plan on trying to look up to see if I have an opportunity. I think I met some people up near Hilton Head one year. went to a game watch up there, but that was a few years ago. But it's good, and it gives, and that also gives everybody an opportunity to travel around, and even before the one membership. I mean, we realize that being in a vacation type environment, it's always good. Anybody that walks in, if they have Penn State gear on and they look around, we make sure that we invite them in with our group.
So Chuck, you've mentioned the watch parties a few times. What is the environment at your watch parties like? Take us into that moment Saturday afternoon watching the Nittany Lions at Beaver Stadium, and how do you generate excitement at those watch parties and unite Penn Staters in that way?
Well, you bring that up. I have three different. We're a very large area, so we decided that we were going to expand and have more than one watch party location. I have Mary Matthews. We first started out down in near St. Pete Beach. She's the one that runs my South County game watch location down there. And then a couple years ago, I met Dave Klein and Cheryl Schultz, and they were part of a group that was meeting in the central part of Pinellas County, and they already had some people that were coming, so we included them because of the one membership. Once again, we included them into the chapter, which is a great thing. So each of our game watch locations are kind of they're kind of different, no matter what type of venue that you use. It seems like it lends itself to a different type of atmosphere. But we always have plenty of Penn State swag, and at the varsity club in Clearwater, where we originally had always met, we have our fabulous gifts and prize raffles at halftime. We have people that are always going along and singing some of the fight songs and cheer songs after we score. Occasionally, we'll have somebody that's doing push-ups. It's just always a good fun time.
You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Chuck Wall, the president of our Suncoast chapter in Florida, whose watch parties apparently are very lively. We've got folks singing. We've got folks doing push-ups. When with this offense, there are a lot of push-ups involved scoring 50, 60, 70 points. And so I think folks might have to pace themselves a little bit. Those are a lot of push-ups, even for the Nittany Lion. But that's great to hear that you're bringing Penn Staters together on game day. Chuck, here's a little bit of a two-part question for you. What about your time at Penn State made you want to stay connected to the university after graduation? And in what role does the local chapter allow you to stay connected to Penn State?
Penn State was you almost have to go back to the alma mater. With your childhood gate, and Penn State actually takes you and molds you, and you're a high school kid when you come there, and you're a college graduate when you leave. There's an awful lot of things that you learn in those 4 years that you can take along and really live with for the rest of your life. That's probably what brings you back all the time. We had a tough time when we were first down here for so many years. We just, from being this far down, you're struggling you're struggling to make a living just like anybody else is these days, and you have kids, and it kind of throws a damper in your travel plan, so to speak. But once I did start going back, it kind of opened up the floodgates. Now at this point here, I try to go back at least once every year, and we're trying to go to an away game once every year for sure. And then we'll see what we can do with the bowl games.
So Chuck, I also wanted to get your thoughts on beyond football. You mentioned that the chapter has a significant fundraiser that you have. It's done very well over the years. Beyond football, what are some of the things that the chapter does to unite Penn Staters, and what are some things that you're particularly proud of that the chapter's contributed to, maybe beyond football?
I think probably the biggest thing that we've ever done and taken on a few years ago, and I had a lot of help with an alumni. Her name was Michelle Reagan, and a few other people, John and Nancy Bello, Jack and Edie Renton, Scott Bigley. We decided that we were going to try to start doing more as far as Thon and helping them out. And we started, and then even to backtrack a little bit more, we had once started Scott and I helped put together with the help of a lady from the Wisconsin chapter down here, the Big Ten of Tampa Bay. So all the Big Ten schools get together in Tampa or in Pinellas County, whatever, depending on where we have the venue for that year. And we have a kickoff party every August, the week before games start. That started into a golf event, and then we decided that we were going to have a Penn State golf event. I had some good friends that were Penn Staters that owned a golf club. Shout out to the Eagles Golf Club in Odessa. So for a few years there, we were able to really put together some good things because they owned the golf course. We got preferential treatment as far as having events there. So I would have one or two golf outings a year, along with a major Thon event that usually attracted at least 100 people. And we were able to, a small little outfit like ours was able to raise over $30,000 each of the 3 years that we were able to do that. Our last one was February of 2020, and we all know what happened the rest of that year. So a lot has changed since then, but we look forward to getting started and pursuing that project once again.
In terms of getting Penn Staters involved with the chapter, Chuck, wanted to see what's your advice to Penn Staters who want to get involved with their local chapter, whether it's the Suncoast Chapter. And like you said to yourself, folks move to a new area, maybe they're starting a new job, a new career, they're expanding their family. what's a piece of advice that you have for Penn Staters listening about one way that they can start to get involved and join a local chapter or get involved with a local chapter?
Well, I think it's a matter of it's a matter of just making the time and just doing it. It almost sounds like a Nike commercial, but the benefits that I've had, I've gotten to meet so many wonderful people. I've done a little shout out to some of the people that I've met with this show, but just to be able to go back and say, for example, see Paul Clifford back at the Alumni Center. Um, you know, and all the people that work at the Alumni Center to help us do what we need to do. And I know they have some really big plans. I'm excited about what's coming out with the abilities that we're going to have as chapters. And for young people now to get involved in this at an earlier age than maybe what I did, just the opportunities to travel and meet people, especially down here, because so many events are in Florida. We've had volleyball national championships down here. We've had the baseball team down here. We've had the wrestling team down here. We've had the softball team down here. It just goes on and on and on. In addition to all the Florida bowls that always seem to pop up. Who knows? And with the change now with the playoffs for football, you just don't know you don't know what opportunities are really going to open up for everybody if they get involved.
No, it's a great point, Chuck. And so for Penn Staters listening, there's a lot of reasons to get involved with a local chapter, like Chuck was saying, whether it's football watch parties or service events, or we know so many Penn Staters are involved with Thon when they're a student. And so, one of the things that our chapters does a great job of is offering a wide variety of events, a wide variety of ways that you can get in back. And so, if you live in the Florida area near the Suncoast chapter, we'll share their information. And I guess I'll ask you, Chuck, what's the best way for somebody to learn more about the Suncoast chapter and stay updated on what you're doing?
It's easy enough just to go. You can either go on Facebook and find us that way. We're the Florida Suncoast Chapter, or you just go to the Alumni Association and go to the big old map and click on Florida, and it'll put every Florida chapter up for you, and you go through until you find the one that's closest to you. There's Fort Lauderdale, Naples, Gulf Coast, us, Tampa, Space Coast, Jacksonville, Panhandle. There's a whole bunch of them, so it's easy enough to find us. All you have to do is look at it or Google it.
And we'll for sure share the chapter information, Chuck. I checked before we started speaking. I last count 14 alumni chapters in Florida, and so there is an alumni chapter near you in the Sunshine State. You are tuned into the Football Letter podcast. We are talking with Chuck Wall, standout volunteer, has been leading the Florida Suncoast chapter for more than a decade. And we can give Nike a little shout out. Mark Parker, president and CEO for a long time, now the executive chairman of Nike, Penn State grad. Of course, Penn State football is outfitted with Nike, so we can give a shout out to Nike. Hey, Chuck, we'll ask you a couple quick hit questions here.
Okay.
What was your favorite class at Penn State?
Oh, I had two. One was a humanities class, and it was a very deep class. Really made you think a lot about how a person fits in with society, and we studied many great philosophers in that class. It was just something that it gave you something to think about. My other one was was physical science 101, believe it or not. Just how things work, and it served me well throughout my whole entire life. And I had a lot of fun with some of the phys eds too. bowling was one of my favorites. Going down to Rec Hall, and actually we had an intramural bowling team in our dorms that year, so that was a lot of fun.
All right, I got to follow up because I've heard stories of bowling at Rec Hall. They used to have the bowling lanes in that iconic original home to Penn State basketball. What are your memories of bowling at Rec Hall? What were the lanes like? How did the ball spin? I got to ask for our audience, but also selfishly for me, I'm curious to know.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, they were better than any public lanes, that's for sure. I mean, it's kind of like going out and playing on the blue course or the white course. I mean, we have we're an agricultural school, so they have to have good greens and good grass on the turf. But the lanes were true. I took bowling 1 and bowling 2 as some of my phys eds. I learned how to throw a hook. I learned how to work spots and boards. So I would actually be aiming for a certain board, starting from a certain spot for just about everything. Ended up, I think I bowled a couple games that were pretty close to perfect games. So I must have had a good instructor.
Absolutely. Hey, at Penn State, it's only the best.
Yeah.
Favorite Penn State football game that you attended, Chuck?
I think it was probably the Orange Bowl in Miami in 2006. It was Joe against Bobby Bowden. We went 3 overtimes. I don't think we got back to the hotel that night until about 4:00 in the morning.
That's a good one. The farthest place from State College that you've ran into a Penn Stater wearing Penn State gear or heard a "We Are."
And I heard the echo too. It was the Grand Canyon. But it might have been actually a little further than that. It may have been the San Diego Zoo one time, but I'm not 100%. I don't remember that time, but I definitely remember the people yelling out "We Are" to me at the Grand Canyon.
Did you yell back Penn State?
Of course.
Okay. All right.
It's funny. The only time that you ever, you can tell whether or not the person is an alumni or just a fan, because if you yell "We Are" and they don't, and they give you the deer in the headlight look, they're probably just a fan that lives, somewhere and just has a Penn State shirt, or they could be. I've heard a lot of things where it was a Penn State dad, and they just don't know the lingo.
They'll pick it up. They'll learn. Downtown State College Saturday night. Where are you and 3 friends going, or where are you and Cindy going? And your daughter, Erica?
Erica is my daughter.
Yes, I wanted to make sure I give her a shout out. If you're back in State College, I was going to ask you, where are you going? But downtown has changed so much. And so whether it exists now or has existed over the last 30 or 40 years, where are you going and what place are you possibly resurrecting?
We used to, I was never a bar person back in the day. But I did like the Rathskeller. And I had a good friend that loved Zeno's. He's no longer with us. So every time I'm back at Penn State, I always go in and have a beer and a toast to Bob. But I guess Rathskeller's now is Doggies, and that's a pretty nice place too. So I think nowadays, though, if we're going down, if I'm going downtown, like my Pittsburgh accent does, I might go to Champs downtown. That's one of the places that I seem to like now. But no, that's it has changed quite a bit. There's not too many. There's a couple bars that have come and gone since even since we started going back.
Oh yeah, it's like on a year by year basis. It's you were back for We Are weekend, Chuck, was it?
Yeah, just this a few weeks ago.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to give you. I was gonna say I tried to run into you, so I was like, we gotta get him on the podcast. All right, next to last question, Chuck.
Okay.
going to the creamery, are you getting an ice cream or a milkshake, and what flavor?
Oh, definitely ice cream. And I think I have a couple different flavors, but one of the ones that I have to have right off the bat, because you can't find it anywhere else that's anywhere as good, is WPSU coffee break. It's just an excellent. A quick short story. We were just out this spring. Cindy and I went out to Utah, and we were traveling around, going to the Mighty Five national parks out there, and we stopped in Salt Lake City. Well, apparently Utah has a creamery as well, so we had to stop and check out this creamery. And I'm here to tell you that our creamery has it hands down. The flavor was good, but the consistency just didn't seem right. Now, it could have been the altitude. I don't know.
Yeah. There's Penn State Berkey Creamery ice cream, and then there's all the other ice cream. And we have our standards at Penn State. We can talk about. I mean, you're talking about more than just the taste, the consistency, and the texture. And so, hey, Berkey Creamery, they do ship, so we can get it shipped down to you in Florida.
Oh, we've done that. We sometimes do that for our homecoming game.
All right. So, yeah, you all know all about it. I'm telling you things that you already know. All right, Chuck, we'll get you one last question here. We've really enjoyed speaking with you. And so I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything that you do for Penn State. It's I imagine that there's a lot that you do that goes on behind the scenes. And so we wanted to bring you front and center here for a little bit on the podcast. This is sort of a broad question, but you're welcome to take it any way that you want. When you look at the role that Penn State has played in your life from an education standpoint, from a social aspect, how would you describe the role that Penn State has had for you in your life?
I would have to say front and center. If it wasn't for Penn State, I wouldn't be who I am today. It molded me as a person. It gave me the opportunity to meet my lovely bride, and certainly being married all these years since then has been a wonderful thing. And I'm hoping to have quite a few more. But actually, since I've been with a chapter down here and involved with the association and with all the other people there, I've gotten way more out of it than what I put in, personally, and on a personal note, and how I feel. It's just a reward that you have a hard time describing it. And a lot of it just comes from just the whole idea of all the years. I mean, I'm still one of, obviously, with a Joe Pa behind me there, I'm still a Joe Pa diehard fan. I remember when he used to come out and visit us at East Halls on his way home, and have little chats with us, and it always wasn't just about football. It was about life in general. And it kind of goes back to that humanities class. You learn how to deal with people, and I think people at Penn State learn how to deal with people, and they treat people the way they should be treated. I don't know. It's hard to really, for me, to describe it. It's just more of a feeling.
Penn State is a special place, no doubt. Our volunteer leaders are special people, no doubt. Chuck Wall, thank you so much for joining the Football Letter podcast and for sharing your story. We really appreciate you, Chuck.
Thanks so much for having me, John. This is probably the first time I've ever been on a podcast.
Well, hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully our audience enjoyed hearing from you. And thanks again, Chuck, for everything that you do. Really appreciated talking with you today.
Thank you, John. Bye-bye.
The ability to come home doesn't happen all that often. To come back to a place like Penn State, why is that important for you?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, PA is my home, and I've been away from it for quite a few years. But, you know, everything as you get older and you develop and you start to realize all those things that are really important, and a large part of that is family and being close to family. So I've always felt at home in Happy Valley, and even when I was away, I felt myself referring to Pennsylvania as home a lot. So to be back, it means the world to me, because that's one of my values is just family. So making sure that was a priority in my life, to actually be actionable and getting closer to my family and be able to spend time with it. And I also feel like a lot of this staff is my family. Like, they have been here from the time that I played, and keeping in contact with those guys over the years and stuff is just all together. I feel like I'm home.
When you think about Penn State, it's usually like every kid's dream growing up in Pennsylvania. When did you realize that this was a place you wanted to be, and to continue to realize that dream? How special is that?
It's awesome. So I mean, to go all the way back, I can remember being this tall and coming to football games with my dad. I was actually joking with Jordan Hill the other night that I'm pretty sure, like, the furthest right corner of Beaver Stadium, my dad and I sat in those seats when I was little and watched a game. So that was a big part of the recruiting process when I was a player. Why I was so drawn to Penn State is just kind of that tradition and feeling like it was home, and growing up watching it and loving it. So obviously that has continued on. Like, it's been difficult for me, even when I was away from Penn State, to really kind of disconnect a part of my identity, feeling like it belongs at Penn State. So for that to just come full circle has really been awesome.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could share a little bit of, like, the last couple of years, just kind of be at another school, and just what have the last couple of years been like for you? How have you grown as a person, as a professional, and how do you think that will help you this year at Penn State?
Yeah, sure. So when I left Penn State, you know, for people that don't really know much about my career here, I had a lot of injuries. So I realized pretty quickly that playing after Penn State was probably not really going to be an option for me. But I was always really interested in the off-the-field stuff, performance enhancement, and whatnot. And that's when sports science was really just kind of it's still in its infancy, but when it was really kind of coming along. And that kind of drew me a little bit. I actually had conversations with our sports scientist who came on, I think my junior or sophomore year, Dave Hamilton, about, you know, if I wanted more information on this, what should I do? Where should I go? And he mentioned this place called East Tennessee State. So I went to ETSU and got my master's degree in strength conditioning while I was a strength coach for football down there. And at the same time, I had started learning about their doctoral program in sport physiology and performance under Dr. Michael Stone. So Dr. Stone is really the first sports scientist in America. He's laid the foundation for a lot of work in training theory and periodization and sports science as a whole. So he was my lab coordinator there. I decided to apply for the PhD program and basically spend the past 3 or 4 years there pursuing my PhD. I'll have to go back one last time to present my dissertation to him. But so that kind of brings it up to speed, and that's been a large part of that experience during that PhD. It's a unique experience that you do the classwork, you learn all this stuff about training theory, sports science, technology, all this different stuff to enhance athletic performance, but then you also apply it to the athletes there. So there's a lot of research going on with the athletes at ETSU and stuff, and it's using a lot of that research to help inform training going forward.
In layman's terms, you know, how would you describe the director of sports performance? Like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, so a big part of this job, a key responsibility, is just connecting all of the different units or departments, right? Sports medicine, strength conditioning, the coaching staff, to data that's important to them in a timely manner. And a lot of times that does have some inferential aspects of it as well, because some data can be difficult to understand. So it's helping to infer what some of this data might mean and just aid their decision-making process. So a large part of it is collecting and handling and analyzing data.
Last summer we had talked to Josh, and he had talked about that they're already looking at cross-country flights, you know, all of that kind of travel with this expanded Big Ten. But what was it like for you to come in and kind of try to pick up where, you know, certain things were left off and were kind of in progress?
Yeah, so I am a huge fan of Josh Nelson. I would say he's been a huge mentor to me, honestly. And coming here, it's actually funny that you mentioned that. It's almost like reading like Leonardo's notebooks, because there's just all this stuff that's been left behind, and it's just, there's so much great stuff that guy did, that it's made the transition so much easier for me to, exactly as you said, kind of pick up where he left off. So he had some great ideas in place and stuff, and it's basically just been building on that, right? This is what they train you to do in a PhD, is to read, research, and understand it and make sense of it and make decisions off of it. So it's basically just conducting literature reviews and talking to other professionals in the NFL, NBA, college, what their ideas are, picking their brains and stuff, and just trying to lay down a general template for how we can be at our optimal performance going into those games.
Is it fair to say that part of your role is finding advantages like on the margins, like in whatever space that is?
Yeah, I would say that's fair to say, and especially because elite athletes really do represent the margins, right? So there's a lot of research and stuff on general populations, but elite athletes don't necessarily fall into that category, right? So, and I don't want to get too like sports sciencey here, but there's, when we look at how significant certain changes might be, or what certain data or metrics mean, it's really easy to say, well, it's not that significant until the difference is way over here. But with elite athletes, this much can make the difference. So some of that is using magnitude-based inference and stuff is one type of statistical technique that we use to make that margin smaller and really detect what's the smallest worthwhile change. So a lot of that, to your point, is staying up to date with current research, current tech, stuff like that, things that are going to give you that little tiny edge, because everybody's doing this, right? So it's kind of an arms race for who can find those little things, but then it's also just substantiating the stuff that we're doing already and making sure that is actually leading to the changes and the performance that we want.
James talked today about the alignment between the departments. As you said, you're kind of that like middle piece of everything. And he said on days we're doing 7-on-7, maybe not running them as hard as possible, so they want to actually perform. How much of that conversation are you helping dictate on, hey, if you want optimal performance, this is what you're doing 4 days out, 2 days out, things like that?
I really appreciate Coach Franklin for how much he's included me in stuff. To be completely honest, one of the, I would say, major complaints of most sports scientists is they feel that they're not included enough, especially when you get to these people with PhDs that think they know everything, that they really want to be included in every conversation. But Coach has been really, really good about that. I'm super thankful for how much he respects my opinion on that type of stuff. So he's been really good about that, about, every day, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Coming in meetings for things that even to me might seem tangentially related, but he wants those opinions, he wants those ideas, he wants different perspectives for things so that we can all basically work synergistically and come up with the best idea.
As you're talking, Andrew, I'm wondering, it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about, or at least some of it might apply to other like sports programs. Like, would you be a resource at all for like Penn State athletics, or is it 100% focused on football?
So my job is 100% focused on football, but that is not to say that I'm not helping where I can for all of Penn State athletics. So we do have performance staff meetings that reach beyond football, where a lot of this crosstalk kind of goes on and stuff. And some of our data stuff, the software that we use and stuff, I'm certified in, so I can kind of help push things like, hey, maybe we should do this, just as a university athletics department as a whole, because sports science is not just a football thing. Sports science is now an every sport thing. So there's millions of data points coming in all the time for all the sports here.
Let me ask you, because I just started reading about transcendental meditation, and that's a whole field. Is that something that, you're smiling, so how much of that are you involved in or familiar with?
Yeah, so I will say I can't speak super intelligently on psychology and stuff. I would say that I myself is an amateur meditator because I have read research that I really think it's has an incredible effect on the mental performance game, which is an aspect of this that you're seeing grow more and more, right? Mental performance. We know how important physical performance is, but the mental stuff is really getting there too. And a lot of that is just helping these guys unplug for like a second, right? Like their brains are going constantly. There's so much stimulus coming in all the time. And that's just one big part of meditation in general, is pulling yourself away from that mind that's just constantly running and observing your own thoughts. And that's that holistic kind of area of performance and well-being is the foundation of what we're trying to do with all of our athletes here, right? If you don't have a good foundation of health and wellness, then you're not going to build on top of it.
What's the daily or weekly kind of interaction with Chuck like in terms of conversations, bouncing things off each other? What's that working relationship like?
It's been great. Chuck has been every decision, every meeting, everything we do, I'm in there. He's made me feel right at home immediately, like I'm absolutely part of his staff. Treating me like I'm a strength coach and that type of stuff, and listening to my ideas. And obviously a lot of my opinions come from the data that we're collecting and whatnot, but it's been incredible. I know a lot of people in the strength conditioning realm and the sports science realm, and I can say without a doubt that this strength staff here is one of the best in the country, and that's not just from how good they are and their competence at their job, but their relatedness to those people that they work with. So I really couldn't be more thankful to work with Chuck, and I'm very grateful for the amount of respect he gives me for my thoughts and opinions on training.
You talked about Coach Franklin being welcome or being open to your opinions, seeking out your opinions. Does that say something about him as a football coach? Is there a larger message there that says, he's willing to come out to you and to hear what you have to say?
I think absolutely. I think that's kind of, to me, one of the things I've gathered over the past couple of years is people that are really good leaders are very good at having radically open minds, right? The second you get to the point of having a closed mind is when you stop making progress. And that's something that coaches, I'm learning from him in that regard, that it's awesome to see how radically open-minded he is for those types of things. And I really think that that's kind of what gets you to that next step, is just making sure that you have perspectives. We all have blinders that we can't see, right? That's just kind of part of our mental models for the world. But Coach Franklin does everything he can to take those off and just get every perspective to make sure that we are making the absolute right choice in whatever we're doing.
Along with the data application and interpretation, do you individually meet with players? Like, what's your level, I guess, of interaction with actual players?
I interact with the players as much as the strength staff does, so on a daily basis, and a lot of that does come from the data, right? We will do wellness and stuff like that, and make sure, like we talked about, that they're doing well, and we do certain tests to kind of measure as proxies for their current performance capability. And if I see things changing or going in a direction that is probably not right, or maybe it's really good, then it's just an opportunity to have a connection with that athlete at that time, right? It's, hey, what's going on with this? Are there any external factors outside of practice or training that maybe we should talk about and stuff? So I'm with these guys all the time. I'm very lucky that Chuck lets me almost act as a strength coach on the floor when we have training, and coach guys up and stuff too, which just presents great opportunities to have those conversations.
What have your impressions been, I guess, of the debate or whatever? I mean, I'm sure you can't group a whole bunch of people into having one personality, but I guess just as a general opinion, what have you made of this group of players?
Of the players, they're competitive, right? We say that this is the most competitive environment in college football, and we are doing everything to make it that way. And that's a credit to our players, because they really make it that way. I mean, when I'm watching them in workouts, I'm like, man, these guys, they just will not accept losing as an option. So I think we're in an incredible spot. These guys have been working their butts off this summer like crazy, and they've just been, for value. They've been competing in absolutely everything that they've been doing. So if I had to put a stamp on it, I would say that they're a competitive group of young men.
Last question, guys.
It's just really unfortunate you don't like Penn State.
What are you most looking forward to this season?
Honestly, being back at Beaver Stadium. Like, I love being able to work with the guys, but this whole thing is to build towards that, right? It's whenever you're laying those stones, you're always envisioning the cathedral that it's going to make, and that's what we're doing right now. So I can't wait to get out there on game day and just watch these guys that have worked so hard this summer outperform everyone they play.